Organize Me Radio, episode 43, Chaos to Calm, Detroit. I'm Naeemah Ford Goldson. Hi everyone, welcome to Organize Me Radio. I'm Naeemah Ford Goldson, and today's guest is the owner of Michael's Precise Planning, and she is the star in season 3 of Chaos to Calm on Aspire TV. Please welcome Michaele Tocco. Welcome.
Hi, how are you?
I am so good. How are you? I'm so excited that you're here to talk with us today.
Yes, I'm doing great. I'm excited. Thank you for the invite.
Of course. So before we jump into talking about your brand new show, can you tell us how you got your start in the organizing industry?
Well, I got my start as a little girl organizing my dollhouse, if we're going to go back quite that far. But officially, I was started doing it on the side in 2014 for colleagues and family who needed their spaces organized. They know I love organizing. Quite a few have been in my home, obviously, and in my spaces, and even my workspaces. My colleagues would always ask, "How do you keep it so neat? Like, what's your trick?" So, yeah, I started in 2014 on the side because I have a 17-year banking background. So I had a full-time career, but I just love organizing. So I started then. And it's something I've always thought about doing, something that my husband over the last, I'll say probably 5 years, has been saying, "Hey, you need to do this." I didn't know that this was actually something you could make good money off of and actually make a living doing. So with the pandemic, we were, like most people, forced to come home, work from home. And it was one of those things where it was like, if I'm going to do it, it's going to be now because I'm at home. I have the time. I have my children, so I'm not concerned about, who's watching them while I'm, embarking on this adventure, so to speak. And yeah, with the support of my husband, my family, my friends, in 2020, I officially launched Michael's Precise Planning, my professional organizing business.
I love it. It's so funny because I feel like a lot of us organizers, have backgrounds in other things. For me it was media, for you it was banking. But I also feel like those things, come into play with our businesses and everything. So that's exciting that you had the opportunity to just go ahead and start your business. And now you're starring in a show. So tell
Yes.
us about Chaos to Calm season 3. What can we expect?
Okay, so Chaos to Come, Detroit. I like to add that because the first two seasons were in Texas. So this one will be in my hometown of Detroit. You can expect to see myself and my on-camera assistant, Rodney, organizing residential and business spaces. It was so much fun. At first, I was really apprehensive because I don't usually work with anybody, but Rodney was really awesome. He caught on very quickly. And it works out because he's kind of in the middle of a project himself with his fiance. So he was hands on, all in, taking notes, writing down all the tips. So you'll see us in spaces like Motown, Hitsville, who doesn't love Motown.
Right.
We got the opportunity to organize a wine company. So, I love my wine, as you know. So that was very fun. We got to organize a bow tie shop on Woodward. Woodward is famous, Woodward Avenue, for its shop, its businesses. It's a landmark. This particular company, he specializes in handmade ties and bow ties for men.
Wow.
So that was really fun, something I've never done before. So yeah, you'll get to see lots of unique spaces, lots of clowning around. We had fun. And anytime you're trying to teach someone something that's foreign to them, and then obviously I'm not an actress, so that was very foreign to me. So yeah, you'll see lots of fun that we had to have and ended up having while we were shooting the show.
So, do you have a favorite space? So, you talked about organizing bow ties, Motown. Which one was your favorite?
Oh gosh, I have a couple favorites. Um, I would say out of my businesses, it had to be Motown. There's so much history there. it it was amazing to be there, and just to even hear stories that I've never heard. I have my mom and my grandparents, you would hear the stories of Motown and seeing Diana Ross and all these different stars, to us, but to actually be there and get an even more in-depth and close-up view of these, it was amazing. So I would have to say out of my businesses, it had to be Motown again, because there's just so much history there. Um, but again, I loved all of the spaces. All the clients were amazing. My residential clients, I loved being able to connect with them and hear their stories. As you know, as an organizer, sometimes there's a lot of emotional clutter that goes into these spaces,
Oh yeah.
emotional attachment. So it was wonderful just even getting to know people that I didn't know lived right here in my hometown of Detroit. And they're awesome, amazing, brilliant people.
So, what is your process like? Do you feel like your process when organizing for TV is different than organizing your residential clients?
No, not necessarily, which I would say was the adjustment piece that I mentioned earlier. Obviously, like I said, because I'm not an actress. So my process is the same. I typically I would have a consultation with my client, which unfortunately in this case was not always the situation. Sometimes I would get pictures and I would get an email that briefly described what was going on. Then I would get to the space and try to get a quick one on one. And it was completely different
Oh
than what was
no.
mentioned in the email.
I've had that
So
happen with clients.
with clients, yes. So I would say that that was the biggest adjustment, not being able to always have that one on one and get to talk to them and figure out what was going on. But the process in itself, I feel, was the same because, again, I would talk to my clients, figure out a plan. I always like to declutter because most of the spaces always need declutter, and you know that. So I
Right.
always like to declutter. Then we get into the sorting, the categorizing before we can do any type of placement, any type of organizing, actually putting things back where they can function. We have to declutter, we donate, we get rid of things, and we categorize and we sort. So that process was the same, I would say, for all of the clients. Um, there were only maybe a couple of clients that didn't need to declutter, like the bow tie company that I mentioned. He didn't need to declutter as much as he just needed to sort and actually categorize items, because he keeps a lot of fabrics and things like that on hand. So in his case, there wasn't a decluttering um, issue that came into play. It was more of just a lot of categorizing like it was just a lot
Yeah.
to separate all of his fabrics out. But the process was the same for, I would say, 95% of the clients.
So, tell me about the time that it takes because we know with organizing and decluttering, it can take days, weeks, months, depending on the client schedule.
Right.
What was it like with filming? Because I assume that you had a quicker turnaround time. How was that? Did you have really long days?
Yes. So my days were typically anywhere from 12 to 14 hours.
Woo, oh my goodness.
And, and that was just, trying to get there and being on set. We won't even start talking about when I actually, woke up in the morning, makeup and all of those things.
Yeah.
I usually, most days, was up at 4:30 a.m.
Wow.
and typically didn't get home till 7:30, sometimes 8:30. By the time we were finished with interviews and discussing the process, it was a very different than what we as organizers are used to. Because again, we're typically not going in with makeup and fresh hair and,
Right.
trying to look all beautiful for our clients. We
Right.
have on our comfy clothes because we're ready to declutter, get a little dirty, and get to work. This process was so different. We did a space in a day. We had to make sure that we could only select spaces that we knew could be flipped in one day. And with that, there was a lot of rush. Sometimes there were shortened lunch breaks. Again, like I said, late days because we needed to flip it literally in those few hours. There are a lot of cutoffs and pausing and can you do that over? Can you explain that? And as organizers, like I said, that we understand the process in our minds.
Right.
So if we switch a product or we change something around, we know why we did it. But then when you do it, and then the producer says, "Why'd you just do that?" And
Yeah.
I'm like, "Well, because it didn't make sense." Well, can you explain that to the audience? So it was just trying to find that those creative words to explain to the audience. And again, being stopped in the middle of working. And again, we're very hands on as organizers. So even being told I can't do certain aspects, because I can't get dirty, or we
Yeah.
don't need you to sweat, or we don't, want your curls to fall. Like things that we just
Ah,
don't concern ourselves with
got it.
were a concern from the producer standpoint,
Right.
So a lot of adjustments.
So, how does your family feel about you doing the show? You mentioned long days, you have children. How is that? Will they be featured on the show at all?
You will hear a lot about my family and about my children. It was an adjustment, especially for my youngest. I have an 8-year-old, and he did miss me. He's used to me. And again, they were virtual at the time. They were still virtual school, because my son is high risk. So we decided to keep him in that second year. So they were used to seeing me in the evening. Even if I worked, I cut my days maybe around 4 o'clock. So they would still see me for dinner. So that was a huge adjustment for him. The first, I would say maybe 2 weeks. And then we did take hiatus weeks in between. So the first couple weeks was hard, but then when he saw, okay, mommy is going to get like some days off to spend with you, he adjusted much better. And then once he saw that, hey, you can text me through the day. Like I may not be able to get on the phone and talk to you, but you can text mommy. I would send him pictures so that he knew what I was doing. So a lot of that kind of played into how they adjusted. My daughter's a preteen, so with those preteens, they can take you or leave you. 1 minute they like
Yeah.
you, 1 minute they don't. So she was
Mhm.
fine. But yeah, my son, it was a huge adjustment for him, because he's my buddy. He's my little buddy.
Aw.
My husband had to learn how to cook more healthy meals
Okay.
because I am typically the one who does the major cooking. He's the frozen pizza, nuggets, French fries, hot dogs guys.
Gotcha.
The night daddy's cooking, we could have pizza roll up. But it was like, yeah, I'm not going to be here for dinner. You can't stuff the kids with junk every day. So, but it worked out. We have this huge air fryer, the crisper, like the whole thing. It's huge. I found some really basic chicken dishes that he can put vegetables in there, potatoes in there, all together, make a meal. We practiced several times a week the first few weeks before we knew I was starting. And he went from the kids saying yuck to this is pretty good, Dad.
Okay.
So I felt better to leave them. And even then, he wasn't doing all the cooking again because I love to cook. So we just kind of had a system. I was home on the weekend, so I would cook a big meal on Sunday. That would give them leftovers Monday and Tuesday. And he kind of did like the Wednesday, Thursday, and then they would eat out Friday and Saturday. But it helped a lot. So there was definitely some preparation to get there because it was like, I don't want to come home and we don't have a home because you burnt it down.
Right. I hope he appreciates that he has an organizer as a wife because it sounds like you got them, prepared for you going off to film and all that stuff. And
Yeah. Like I said, it was a process. It definitely was.
so while you were filming or throughout the process, did you face any challenges with it?
Yeah, like I said, I would say the biggest challenge is trying to flip it in one day. There were, like I mentioned, a couple of spaces when we would get there and when I would get my opportunity to talk with the client, it was completely different than the original email that they may have sent to the network describing their space. So one of the clients, when she emailed the network, we were supposed to be organizing and making one of her rooms into a closet. Well, once we arrived, that had completely switched and it was now turning into a guest room and a workspace. And
Wow.
everything else was coming out. So I bought all these supplies to organize a closet to get
Oh
there, and
no.
now I'm not organizing the
Oh
closet.
no.
So yeah, the producer was kind of on edge, like, can we fix this? What are we gonna do? I jumped on my Target app and found a few things for the office, and we made some magic happen. Because again, as you know, that's just what organizers do. That's what we do. We're always thinking of the next step to make the space what the client needs it to be. So yeah, those were some challenges. And again, sometimes pictures weren't exactly the way
Right.
the space was. So when I arrived, it was just chaos,
Mm.
hence the name of the show, but it's more chaos than we were prepared for.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I would say again, the challenges were just, you know, as an organizer, being able to like fully describe products, say maybe where we purchase products from. Again, networks are not giving out free sponsorships. So there were times where I would say, "Oh, I got this from the Container Store. Oh, this lovely thing from Target." And it's like, well, you can't say Container Store, you can't say Target, you can't say this, you can't say that.
Got
There were a
it.
lot of, you can't say Tetris, you have to say puzzle. So it was a lot of little things that we just naturally say as organizers that I had to be mindful of and constantly, I need you to repeat that line. And I'm like, why? You said this. What's wrong with that? Well, or there's new laws, or, you have to consider people's feelings about certain things. So then there's certain words where it may not seem like a big deal to us because we know how we meant it, but it's like, well, we want to make sure it doesn't come across to our viewers a certain way. So it was a lot
Okay.
of little things like that that I would say out of the 9 weeks, by week 7, I had it together.
Okay. Hey, as long as you got there, right?
Long as I got there, we were there eventually.
I love it. So, how did this opportunity come to you? I feel like when it comes to Black organizers, a lot of people feel like we don't exist, you know? When it comes to opportunities, Black organizers aren't given as many opportunities as our white organizers. We know this industry is dominated by white women, and they're getting most of the opportunities. So, first of all, I'm excited that a NABPO organizer has this opportunity. But how did it come about? Did you seek the opportunity? Did the opportunity come to you?
The opportunity definitely came to me. Because like I said, I'm not an actress. I don't consider myself to be a TV personality. And it's funny that so many people think differently, like, oh, you have such high energy, but I'm a very social introvert, for a lack of a better way to describe myself. So I'm very much to myself, to my family, in my own space, but I do love meeting people. So I am very social. And they're like, oh, you're perfect. You're a great extra. I'm like, I'm really not. So, a day of work, I had to come home and hide for a few hours. But yeah, there's definitely a lack of Black organizers in the industry in terms of media. You don't see our faces on the screen. As you said, nearly as much as our white counterparts. You don't even see us in the business as much because, again, the opportunities are given more to our white counterparts. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast if we were even to get into it.
It really
But,
is.
yeah, I feel that we do have to work harder to establish that trust. A lot of clients, they want to know, well, what's your background? How many spaces? How many this? How many that? I've personally seen, even here in Michigan, my white counterparts, get opportunities in areas or spaces. And, if we discuss, well, what did they ask you? Like, what did they want you to have in terms of like your, what your criteria or what your background is? And it's like, oh, nothing. We just went and talked and they hired me. Whereas with us, that's not always the case. Well, did you go to school? What do you have any references? And nothing's wrong with asking for references. Nothing's wrong with asking about background. I do it myself, but I do it equally in
Mm-hmm.
business in general. It's
Right.
not a racial thing. So I do, we have Niecy Nash,
Mm-hmm.
but outside of her, there's not been another Black organizer, home decor, whatever category you want to put it on. You've not really seen anybody since Niecy Nash.
Right.
You see a lot of home decor, interior design, organizing shows, building shows, home improvement. It is probably 95% white.
Oh yeah.
So I do appreciate networks like Aspire TV who give BIPOCs the opportunity to show our skills, to show that we do exist, because Black girls do organize,
Right.
And like I said, that's a whole nother podcast if we go back to how far we've been keeping spaces together. So,
Girl.
it's again, that's a whole nother podcast. We,
Right.
we don't even have enough time for that one. But it's like most things where we have to prove ourselves, even if our skills have been there for centuries.
Right.
It's not a thing until our white counterparts do it. So yeah, like I said, women like Niecy Nash, they created that platform for us originally before all of these new organizers doing all these fun little things in their spaces.
Yeah.
Niecy Nash was out there long before that.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciate, people like her, Egypt Sharon, her and her husband, they have a home design show. I love, so when I can see other Black people, BIPOCs, representing what I know we have the skill to do, it's amazing. And again, I appreciate networks like Aspire TV that are trying to give us that platform to show that we have equal talent, and it should be recognized.
I completely agree with you there. And when you mention people like Niecy Nash and Egypt, I think it's also important to note that, they've had careers and platforms before these shows. So when it comes to our white organizers and home improvement specialists, whatever you want to call them, designers, a lot of times they don't have that background. They didn't have a platform before this. So it's okay for like a white organizer that we don't know who they are to come in and have a show, right? But I feel like, or a design expert, but I feel like when it comes to Black people, they want you to have a certain level of celebrity already, which is another good thing about Aspire TV. It's like you take an organizer who is just as much of an expert, if not more, as these other organizers, and you put them on TV and do it your way. So I really appreciate Aspire for doing that and for having this show Chaos to Calm, because again, there are so many of us out there who, and a lot of, Black organizers who want to be organizers but aren't seeing Black faces as organizers, so it discourages them from coming into the industry. So I think this is great. I hope that other networks are taking note. We want this content,
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And like you,
and kudos to you, because this is like a trailblazing moment. I know Chaos to Calm had a couple other seasons already, but you doing this like in Detroit and doing businesses and Motown and all that, girl, you're doing it.
I appreciate it. Like you said, we have just as much expertise, if not more sometimes. So yeah, just giving us that platform, and like you said, taking that chance and not requiring that we're already celebrities. Because again, I was not seeking a TV show. Ironically enough, I received an email through my contact form from the producer, and I thought it was a scam because it was like, well, who sends, looking for an organizer through a contact? And I did some research on her. I talked to my lawyer like a smart girl does, and
Yeah.
it was just like, who is this? Like, is she, real? And it turned out to be legit. So when I reached back out to her, she sent me like her entire, background or everything that she's done. And we went from there. And she even told me, she goes, if this is not your thing, let me know. But maybe another Black organizer that would love to do this in Detroit, because we're looking to go to Detroit. So yeah, I wasn't looking for it. She found me on Google. I believe she reached out to NAPO, Michigan, just to verify that I was like an active member. I think she reached out to NAPO also. I think she said she reached out to NAPO also.
Yeah.
But yeah, just to verify that I was like an active member. But yeah, they want Black organizers. They want to showcase their talent. So yeah, it's important to not, I guess, hold ourselves back because it's dominated by our white counterparts. Because again, me as a woman, I feel like if one of us wins, we all win. So for me, there's not a race thing, but the fact that it does exist, we can't ignore it either.
Right.
So I don't want us to hide ourselves or, play down our skills because we don't see ourselves. Because again, I wasn't looking for it. I hadn't reached out to anybody, but she found me on Google, started following me on Instagram, seeing my work, seeing my interactions, in my stories and things like that. And she's like, I love your energy. And that's why I decided to reach out to you. So you never know who's watching. So I don't want us again to dial back our energy as Black women because it's dominated by white women. We don't know who's watching us and who wants to give us that opportunity to shine and show again our expertise and our skills.
I love it. So what advice would you give to other Black female organizers who might be interested in having their own show as well?
Get out there, like put yourself out there. Again, I know one of the main things that when I interviewed with, the producer and then the editors at the show, they were just like, we love your energy. They want authentic people, so don't be afraid to be yourself. And again, as you're shooting, those of you who know me a little bit better, you'll notice the things that I was probably kind of guided to say as opposed to actually saying on my own. But again, for the most part, you're going to see my energy, you're going to see my personality, you're going to see me 100% stressed out if a space is not the way I want it to be. So just being yourself on your social media platforms, wherever it is that you're showing up at, show up, be yourself. Again, don't try to be like somebody else because you think that that's what it takes to win. Get out there, be yourself, be your Black girl power, like show it all and show what you can do, because that was one of the things that they said that they liked about me. They said you just had a natural energy, you seemed very comfortable. And I was the same way with them. There were days where it was like, listen, I wouldn't say this or I wouldn't do this, so we need to figure out something. But they will appreciate that. So, and again, even making sure you ask your clients for reviews. Like I said, she found me on Google. I have a 5-star rating. So just making sure you're asking, for those reviews to build up, your name as well. Because again, we know that unfortunately more of that is required for us than it is our white counterparts. So we don't want to, be outshined, so to speak, because we know how great we are.
Right, right. I love it. Okay, let's take it a little bit lighter. One of
Okay.
my favorite things to ask everyone: what are your favorite organizing products?
Oh, I love me a lazy Susan. Yes, or should I say a turntable, because we're dropping that lazy Susan because it's far from lazy. I love me a turntable. Those things are magical. I have quite a few in my house. So I would say that's one of my favorite products. I love drawer dividers. So turntables, drawer dividers. I think those have to be my two
Okay.
favorite because you can do so much with them. And like
Hmm.
a lot of these modern kitchens now, like the pantries,
Hmm.
the drawers that pull out, you can even get the dividers in there now to separate cans. So I think they have the most multi-purpose use for them. So I love me a turntable and some dividers. I do.
I love it. Yeah, I love a turntable in like a corner, especially when there are like corner shelves, and that's the easiest way to
Yeah.
get access to things. And you can just turn it around and get what you need. So I feel you on that one.
Yes. And even for like kids supplies, like,
Hmm.
because my son would have markers and crayons everywhere. So being able to even like put them in craft spaces, they are gold.
I love it. Okay. Now, on a not so serious note, but inspiration, I would say. What is your greatest achievement as a professional organizer?
My greatest achievement as an organizer, I would have to honestly say, is being able to help other women. As you know, it's very rare that we get a call from a man saying that he's stressed out in his
Hmm.
space and he needs help. So to be able to empower another woman, to be able to take control of her household, implement new systems, new ways of doing things, possibly by involving her husband, her children, but empowering them to feel like they can do it, and to see that stress and that overwhelm removed from someone. That's the greatest feeling. I mean, because I have a family and it's not easy. My husband and I are complete opposite. It took some time to get him on board, but it can be done. So to see another woman, once their space comes together and she's in tears and she's saying, I never thought it could look like this. You have no idea what you've done for me. Like that's a feeling that's unmatched to bring that kind of joy to someone. And again, as a woman, I completely get it. We wear a lot of hats. And even if you have a great partner, there's it's not the same. We still carry a lot, on us as women to keep things running smoothly. So to be able to empower another woman to do the same in her home and to just feel that stress relief and feel that calm and that peace in her space, that's unmatched.
I love it. I love it. Michael, thank you so much for taking the time. I cannot wait to see you on Chaos to Calm. It's going to be so exciting. Can you tell everyone how they can find out more information about you and where can we watch Chaos to Calm?
Yeah, so you can find out more about me. You can find me on Instagram or Facebook at Michael's Precise Planning. And if you spell it correctly, you will find me. So it's Michaele, Precise Planning. And that's my name on Instagram and Facebook. but you can catch me on Chaos to Come Detroit season 3 on Aspire TV. You can stream it on Philo. I know for sure. I'm not sure of all the cable companies that have it, but I know you can stream on Philo.
All right, Michael, thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me. I really do appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to tune in next time for an all new episode.